All right, so we're going to get started. Welcome to the 2024 Water Quality Forum. My name is Laura Boyd, and I'm going to be moderating this forum tonight. So before we get started, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items. First, our charcuterie came in a bag, a plastic bag, and that is recyclable. So you can place this in the orange bins in the back of the room so it gets recycled. And for everyone in the room tonight, if we had to evacuate for an emergency, I just want to point out our emergency exits, and then we'll all just kind of corral over to the visitor parking that you all hopefully parked in this evening. And if we needed to shelter in place, the shelter in place area is the bathrooms, so it's directly across the hall on the other side. And we aren't going to be taking any breaks, so if you have, if you need to get up to use the restroom or take a phone call, I just ask that you please, well, obviously go as you please. And then for the folks that are on the online, we muted your lines. So if you have a question or any technical difficulty, please just type into the chat and Deb Leonard will assist you behind the scenes. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our director, Diana Christie, to start us off.
Thank you, Laura. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here today and joining us for our Muddy Creek Water Quality Forum. We're thrilled to have such a dedicated group of stakeholders here, and we truly appreciate your time and engagement tonight. Whether you're an expert in the field or new to this conversation, your perspectives are invaluable as we work together to protect and improve water quality in our communities. We have a full and exciting agenda ahead with a mix of interactive activities, informative presentations, and collaborative discussions. To kick things off, we're going to have Laura's going to dive into some fun water quality trivia, and then that'll set the stage for our conversation. As we move through the agenda, we'll be getting insights on the Ohio water quality standards from Alana Mormon, followed by a watershed overview again from Laura Boyd. And this will give us a deeper understanding of the watersheds in our region and why they're so critical to water quality. Following that, we'll take a look at the 2023 MBI results, highlighting key findings through an engaging story map. After each segment, we'll wrap up with some trivia to keep the momentum going. The second half of our forum will focus on the partnerships that make this work possible. We'll hear from Miami Conservancy District, Hamilton County Conservation District, and Hamilton County Public Health, who will each share updates and insights on streams, riparian corridors, and overall water quality efforts in the county. So before we get started, again, I just wanted to emphasize how important these partnerships are to our success, and that working together, sharing our knowledge, and supporting each other, supporting each other's efforts is key to ensuring the future of clean, safe water in our community. Once again, thanks for coming tonight. I think I'm just kicking it right back to Laura, who's going to get started with some trivia and some other fun stuff. So thank you, Laura.
Okay, thanks, Diana. So yeah, as Diana pointed out, we do have a full agenda for this evening. And I'm going to actually turn it over to Elena Mormon to give us kind of a high-level overview and a refresher on Ohio water quality standards, just so that we're all kind of on the same page as we move further into the discussions this evening. So I would like to welcome Elena up. Oh. Okay, I take that back. I apologize. We are going to do a trial on my Mentimeter. So if you guys could go ahead and scan the QR code, we're going to do a word cloud. So it's on your table, or you can scan the QR code that's on the screen. If you're attending virtually, you should be able to participate in the Mentimeter as well. So I'll give everyone a few minutes to go ahead and attempt to get started. All right, so our first question is going to be, what does clean water mean to you? And you should be able to type up to 3 responses in the field. Got one participant. All right. Keep them coming. That's better. Okay. I think we can all agree that water is life and is one of our most precious natural resources. So I appreciate the participation, and I will now turn it over to Elena to give us an overview of water quality standards in Ohio.
All right, so water quality standards. What are they? Water quality standards are the water quality goals that we have for our surface water bodies. So essentially, it's a statement of how clean we want our waters to be. And in Ohio, there are 3 foundational pillars to water quality. We have beneficial use designations, water quality criteria, and anti-degradation. We're going to talk about a little each of these in a little more detail as we go through the slides. But water quality standards are so important because they are the foundation for other regulatory actions. So keep that in mind, and let's talk about beneficial use designations. Okay, so in Ohio, each water body is assigned 1 or more aquatic life habitat use designations. Additionally, each water body may be assigned 1 or more water supply use designations and 1 recreation use designation. And if you were to, if you were curious what a local water body, what beneficial use designations it had, you would go into the rules and you would see a table like this, where the water body segment is listed on the left-hand side, and then you see each of the use designations has their own column. So aquatic life habitat use designations, Phillips Creek is the example here. That's listed, that's designated as a warm water habitat. It's also listed, it has 2 water supply use designations. It's listed as an agricultural water supply and an industrial water supply. And it's also listed as primary contact recreation. Primary contact recreation is what all surface water bodies default to unless they're specifically listed as a bathing water or a secondary contact recreation. So for the Great Miami River, you would find those water body segments in the rule listed here. There's also a specific listing for like Southwest Ohio tributaries, Little Miami tributaries, whatever you're looking for, it's in the rules. Okay, so aquatic life use designations. We have a tiered, they're listed here tiered. These are the most common ones that you will find in MSD service area. And since we have a tiered system, that means that as we move up, the water has a higher biological integrity. So there's more going on. It's just capable of housing more activity. I hesitate to say that it's like better. It's not saying that limited resource waters are bad. It's just that they're not capable of sustaining as much as an exceptional warm water habitat. So if you see, yeah, that's good. That's good. Let's move into the visuals because this helps. This helps understand. So exceptional warm water habitats, look how beautiful. There's a lot of water. There's a lot of life in there. Beautiful. We love it. All of these are beautiful. Modified warm water habitat, beautiful in its own way, okay? There's stuff happening there. Limited resource water, it's still pretty, there's still stuff happening, just not as much as with the exceptional warm water habitat. And then we have regular warm water habitat. You'll notice that when Laura starts going over the results from our bioassessment, You won't see exceptional warm water habitat. There are no water bodies with that designation in our West Side study area. Okay, so next we're going to talk, we don't have a slide on drinking water. That's okay. I told you that there were the 3 different designations for water supply. Sorry, not drinking water. And then we're going to look at recreational use. So recreational use designations are determined by evaluating E. coli. E. coli are these microscopic organisms that are normally present in feces and intestinal tracts of humans and other warm-blooded animals. So by measuring E. coli, we can see just how much crap is in the water, essentially. And the study doesn't differentiate between like human waste and like animal waste. It's just a measure. E. coli is used as an indicator for the presence of other pathogenic organisms. And these designations, the bathing waters, primary contact, and secondary contact, are only in effect during the recreation season, which is from May 1st to October 31st. And like I said, primary contact is what all surface water bodies kind of default to. That's the designation they're given, unless they're specifically called out as being a bathing water, which is like wonderful because there's a lot of, you can swim in that all the time, and then secondary contact. Okay, so the second pillar of water quality standards is water quality criteria. We have our beneficial use designations. The water quality criteria are the yardstick that we measure against to see if we're meeting the beneficial use designations. So there are 2 different types of water quality criteria. We have numerical, which is based on designated use. So there are different types of numerical criteria that come into place depending on what designated use a water body has. And then we have narrative water quality criteria. And these are your free-from statements, and they apply to all of the surface waters, regardless of what designated use you have. And in the bioassessment results that Laura goes through, you'll see that the MBI, the organization that conducts these bioassessments for us, they are pulling data under chemical and biological data so we can assess the aquatic life, habitat, designated use, and the recreation designated use. Okay, so when MBI goes out and pulls all of this data, they are comparing it against these different indices to gauge how the quality of our waters. So these are examples: index of biotic integrity and the modified index of well-being. These are 2 indices that help gauge, that use fish to help gauge how healthy our rivers are. So the modified index of well-being is like looking at, hey, how many different species of fish are there? How big are they? Yeah, I was trying to think of what else was in that listing, but we're essentially looking at fish species for as a determination of stream health. Other 2 examples are invertebrate community index, which is looking at macroinvertebrates, and then we're also doing like water quality analyses for like chemical properties and physical assessments, because stream health is also determined on the quality of the stream itself. Like, you know, is there a lot of erosion? How steep are the banks? That sort of thing. So this is what else MBI is looking at. And okay, the last foundational pillar of water quality standards is anti-degradation. And anti-degradation just means, hey, we're keeping clean water clean. We're not going to let our water quality deteriorate beyond where it's currently at. So as the slide says, it's a framework for maintaining and protecting existing beneficial uses. That doesn't mean that water quality can never be lowered. water quality can be lowered for important economic or social development, but it must be without the loss of uses. And it establishes a procedure for determining whether a discharge is necessary before authorizing it. So this is just to give you an example of when this comes into play. MSD has to, when we are, there's an anti-degradation portion to the permit renewal that we have to fill out. And it asks, hey, are you going to be putting any more outlets into the stream? If so, we need to take that into consideration, because if you're going to be pumping, more treated wastewater in, that could impact the biological integrity of that watershed. So it comes into play for MSD directly, and that's just one example where you'll see it. So I think that's it for water quality standards. It's a lot to take in, so don't feel overwhelmed. Laura will help you. It'll make more sense when she starts talking through all of it. Okay.
Thank you. Great job, Elena. And I think you did a really good job of setting the stage for what we're about to discuss. And I wanted to also point out that Elena and I are not experts in water quality standards, and we're not experts in bioassessment. But luckily, we do have experts in the room. So there are folks from NBI present, as well as Ohio EPA. So if there are questions, we can follow up with those folks after the presentation. So we're going to jump into the trivia portion. And this is meant to be fun. If you win, you get bragging rights. But if you want to go ahead, you should. If you already scanned the code, you should be already logged in. But we'll go ahead and get started. And you can play anonymously. So if you are not brave enough to put your name in there, you can use a different name. So we're going to go through 10 questions. And all right. So the faster you answer, the more points you get. And the first question is, how large is the Muddy Creek watershed? Is it working on your end? Okay. Let's see. This is my first time doing this, so we'll see. But how large is the Muddy Creek watershed? And so the surface area that drains to the Muddy Creek. Sorry. That's what Google gave me. Hey, pretty good. Most folks got it right. Okay. Second question. Again, if you answer faster, you get more points. How often are Ohio water quality standards reviewed? No cheating, none. Let's see. Okay, about a lot of folks got it right, but not everyone. Okay, I don't like that I have to do this every single time, but it worked. All right, question 3. Okay, which West Side plant has the largest design capacity? All right, good job. Almost everyone got that one right. All right, question 4. The earliest bioassessment data available, I keep doing this, but the earliest bioassessment data for the Muddy Creek was available when? Still loading. All right, the answer is 1991. That was Ohio EPA study, not MSD. MSD's first study was 2014, I think. How many wastewater treatment plants does MSD operate? Dun, dun, dun. Oh, no. Okay, I can skip it. All right. Snuggles is in the lead. Whoever Snuggles is. Okay, so we're going to move on to question number 6. Okay, the question is, how many home sewage treatment plants are in the study area? I gave you a visual. The answer is 67, 65, I think total, but I gave you ballpark numbers. Still a lot of home sewage treatment systems. Okay, UV disinfection is the primary method for disinfection at all the West Side treatment plants. True or false? The answer is true. MSD uses UV at all West Side plants when it's working. All right. Question 8. Are you going to work properly? Which MSD wastewater treatment plant is the oldest? Indian Creek, Mill Creek, Little Miami, or Muddy Creek? Indian Creek is technically the oldest. Good job to the 5 people who knew the answer. But if you're MSD, then that doesn't count. Okay. Question 9. Which MSD wastewater treatment plant is the only one to have combined sewer overflows in its collection system? And I'll caveat this to say the only one on the west side. All right, good job. It is Muddy Creek. All right, this is the last question. Does not like that. It did?
Yeah.
Okay. Well. Yeah. Okay, let's skip that. So let's see who's in the lead. Sorry, you don't get the question. The answer to the question, what was the question? I forget already. Oh, So how many CSOs were eliminated in Muddy Creek? The answer is 11. Okay. So I do have a bonus question, and I might just skip it because this is the plugin for PowerPoint for Mentimeter is not working too well. Okay. In the 1800s, Cincinnati valleys were famous for which of the following? West Side valleys. Okay, well, it's actually wine vineyards. Yeah. Okay. Is this updating? I don't know. I'm going to have to go back and look at this. But okay, thank you for participating in my trivia. Hopefully you guys were surprised by a few of those facts. So now we're going to jump into the bulk of the presentation, which is the results of the 2023 MBI bioassessment. And this year's bioassessment focused on the Muddy Creek, Rapid Run, Indian Creek, and the Upper Taylor Creek subwatershed. So MSD has been monitoring and performing the bioassessments for quite a long time. The first round of bioassessments began, the baseline studies began in 2011 and continued through 2014. And so we are in the third round of bioassessments for the Muddy Creek watershed. And we have now, like I said, completed 3 full rounds. So we have 10 years, almost 10 years of data, plus the historic data that was performed by Ohio EPA. So the watershed overview, I thought this image was really interesting because it shows the elevation difference from the west side and the east side of our region. And the Muddy Creek watershed actually begins basically the red ridge in the middle. Everything to the west of that is the Muddy Creek and west side tributaries. So you can see the contrast between the west side and the east side topography. So these are the 4 sub-watersheds that we'll be discussing, and the large purple watershed is the Taylor Creek watershed. Just below that in blue, we have the Muddy Creek watershed. To the bottom right-hand corner is going to be Rapid Run, and then Indian Creek is the little orange one, and the most western sub-tributary. So for those that aren't familiar with the bioassessment, the objectives of it, there are 3 main objectives. And the first one is to evaluate and recommend the appropriate aquatic life use tier, or ALU. This determines which biological and chemical criteria apply to a water body, as Elena kind of gave us already a refresher on. And I'm not going to go into detail about this slide, but just kind of showcasing the difference between the different type of water bodies and designated uses. So MBI, through their paper, make recommendations to Ohio EPA under the Level 3 Credible Ohio Water Law. And those recommendations for this year are similar to the recommendations that have been made in the past. And you'll see that they are still pending with Ohio EPA. And so hopefully, I don't know how long that process takes, to be honest, or why they're still pending. Probably maybe a question for Ohio EPA. But the recommendations, what I wanted to point out here is that the recommendations are still the same from the prior or previous MBI report. So the second objective of the bioassessment is to determine the attainment status and then causes or sources of impairment. And the knowledge of impairment waters is needed to develop and prioritize management actions. So attainment status for aquatic life use is the degree to which environmental parameters or indicators are either above or below that water quality criteria set by our water quality standards that Elena already gave us an overview of. And you'll see it portrayed as either full, so that means all the bio criteria was in attainment or met. Partial attainment means that one or two bio criteria was in attainment, and then non-attainment means that there were no bio criteria attained for that survey. So if you are looking at the MBI report, you'll notice the different symbols on the right side is the legend that's in the report indicating that aquatic life attainment status. So for the 2023 report, there were 34 sites in total, and 21 of those 34 sites were evaluated against the aquatic life use bio criteria. However, 10 of those 34 sites were primary headwater sites, and attainment status is not given to those headwaters. And then there were 3 sites that were dry, so they were not able to be sampled. And you'll notice that those were in the rapid run subwatershed. So of the 21 sites evaluated, 14% were in full attainment, 14% were in partial attainment, and 71% of the sites surveyed were in non-attainment of aquatic life use standards, which 71% is a pretty large number. And hopefully we'll, as we go through, understand why that is and what's contributing to that non-attainment. So this slide is kind of a breakdown of the just the numbers. I'm a numbers person, so I needed a table, but you'll see the aquatic life use designation on the left indicating warm water habitat, limited resource water, and then 2 different types of primary headwaters. So we had 19 sites that were classified as warm or designated as warm water habitat, and only 1 of those was in full attainment. 3 were in partial attainment, and 15 were in non-attainment. And I also am on, the last 3 columns indicate whether that improved from the 2014 bioassessment or didn't change or declined. So in the warm water habitat sites, we did have 1 site that improved. There were 12 that kind of stayed the same, so there wasn't much change. Maybe incremental change, but not too much. And then there were 6 sites that declined. For the limited resource water, we had 5 that were part of the survey. 2 of those were in full attainment, and 3 were unable to be sampled. And again, most of those limited resource waters are in the rapid run watershed. And then we have the primary headwaters. One of those, well, you don't assign attainment status to the primary headwaters, which is why it says NA. But you'll notice on the right-hand side of the table that 1 site, the 1 primary headwater 2 site did not change, and then the primary headwaters 3A did not change either. So now I'm going to talk about the biological assemblages that were monitored or part of the assessment. There were 36 different fish species and 2 hybrids collected during the survey. The predominant fish species were the central stone roller, black-nosed dace, creek chub, and blunt-nosed minnow. And rapid run was the least diverse subwatershed. And then 2023 results, I think overall, point to the organic enrichment and habitat limitations, which is similar to the prior bioassessment. And then the table kind of breaks down what the number of fish species observed per watershed. And you'll see that rapid run is that, is the least diverse in that group. So when we take a look at the causes of impairment associated with the subwatersheds, MBI, I think, did a great job of breaking this down in the report. They kind of grouped Muddy Creek and Rapid Run together, and then kept Taylor Creek and Indian Creek together, and to draw the contrast between CSO watersheds and non-CSO watersheds. So I think it gives you kind of a good contrast there. And you'll notice that the breakdown and distribution of impairments changes based on whether you are in the Muddy and Rapid Run watershed versus being in the Taylor Creek and Indian Creek subwatershed. So what I took away from this is that a lot of the impairment is due to chlorides and urban stormwater runoff. And that's true in both watersheds, but you'll also notice that the chlorides and urban runoff is more of an issue in the Upper Taylor Creek and Indian Creek watershed. So, oh, sorry. Yeah. So the top pie chart is the Muddy Creek Rapid Run watershed, and then the bottom pie chart, which I just clipped this out of MBI's report, but the bottom one is the Taylor Creek, Indian Creek. So the dark gray or black is the chloride impairment, which for the Taylor Creek and Indian Creek watersheds is over 50%. And then the habitat is the second largest. And I think it's important as a wastewater utility, we have very little control over the habitat and very little control over urban stormwater runoff. So even if MSD did everything correctly, we may not make as big of an impact as other entities would. Yep. So again, you can see, I think the takeaway here is that there is widespread impairment in all of the watersheds, and we have work to do. So just wanted to highlight some of the water quality exceedances and sources of impairment. So there were exceedances of the water quality criteria, which were infrequent, and they occurred mostly for dissolved oxygen at 10 sites, and then there was one single exceedance for pH. And then there were 8 sites evaluated for nutrient enrichment, and 2 of the 8 sites were likely to be found to be caused, or their impairments caused by nutrients, which would be the Muddy Creek, the uppermost sampled sites in the Muddy Creek watershed. And then I wanted to touch on the urban parameters briefly. So the urban parameters include the ionic strength measures such as conductivity, total chloride, and total dissolved solids, suspended sediment, and selected heavy metals such as lead, copper, and zinc. And then these are commonly elevated in urban areas due to stormwater runoff. And then again, TDS had the most exceedances, followed by chlorides and conductivity. There were no exceedances observed for the 3 heavy metals or the suspended sediment. So again, just highlighting, and this is actually showing the recreational attainment status, the recreational use attainment status, and you can tell from the map that we are not meeting recreational use standards in non-CSO watersheds. So I think the massive amounts of home sewage treatment systems is a contributing factor to that in those watersheds. And yeah, so not gonna harbor on that, but the legacy impacts, I did also want to talk quickly about Rapid Run, because 3 of those sites were not able to be sampled due to the dry stream beds. And this seems to be just a legacy issue due to the historic sewer line construction. And there is incremental improvements. I think the MBI report, if you take a closer look at it, you can see that. But overall, they're still contributing to stream desiccation, which again is is evidenced by the dry stream bed. So we kind of already touched on this in the trivia, but this slide is highlighting the home sewage treatment systems, which again are contributing to E. coli, organic enrichment, and nutrient impairment in the subwatersheds. I also wanted to highlight that MSD is currently conducting a study of the sewer assessment program and evaluating opportunities for improvement in that program. So now looking at the objective, the third objective for the bioassessment is to kind of take a look back and evaluate the trends over time. So these images are directly from the MBI report, and the first one, again, is pointing back to that index of biotic integrity. And the fish IBI score, I think at first glance, you'll notice that not a lot has changed on the upper portion, which is the area of attainment, but there is some change and incremental improvements in the area of degradation, which is the bottom portion of that graph. So while we may not be increasing our area of attainment, we are decreasing our area of degradation. And then the image on the right is showing the macroinvertebrate ICI index. And again, there's not a lot of change here. So the bugs are not happy. And the Muddy Creek, so these two maps are showing the aquatic life use narrative status versus the aquatic life use attainment status. And I think, I hate to say a lot hasn't changed, but because there has been some change, there's been some incremental improvements, but when you take a step back and look at it holistically, there really hasn't been a lot of movement in these watersheds. So my key takeaways from the MBI report are that we're not meeting water quality standards, aquatic life use or recreational use in the non-CSO watershed. So even Taylor Creek and Indian Creek, we're not meeting our water quality standards. And 62 to 75% of the weighted aquatic life use impairments are due to chlorides in urban stormwater runoff and habitat. So as I pointed out earlier, the Muddy Creek and Rapid Run watershed, the habitat impairment is twice the amount of the impairment of Taylor and Indian. And then again, home sewage treatment systems, their discharges need to be better characterized to quantify their role in observed impairment. So I think that leads to maybe we need to develop a study to understand those impairments and sample discharges from home sewage treatment systems to better understand those discharges. And then again, overall, there is widespread impairment, but there has been some incremental improvement since 2014. And one thing, Elena and I worked on putting together a story map and some history for the watershed. And one thing we discovered was that there was not really a organization that we could find, like the Mill Creek Alliance or the Little Miami Conservancy. There's not really a champion for the Muddy Creek watershed. And I think that probably, is one of the reasons why we're not seeing these improvements, at least from our research. If there is somebody out there, I would like, hopefully they can come to one of these in the future. But I'm going to switch gears. That was kind of an overview of the bioassessment. And again, I'm not an expert in that. If there are questions, I will take those and we follow up. I think the important thing to remember is that the data that we have available is all we can infer. So now I'm going to switch gears and talk about water quality MSD and the in-stream monitoring program. So why we do this, and we do this because we're required by our CSO permit, and that CSO permit mandates that we do this bioassessment once during the life of the permit, so once every 5 years. So we will be back in the Muddy Creek watershed to sample again in 5 years. And then some of the feedback we've got from this forum in the past is how water quality and how these assessments are used internally and for capital improvement planning. And I just I tried to paint the picture of that water quality is kind of at the core of everything that MSD does. And so water quality is that foundation. And then on top of that foundation, we have the Clean Water Act. And that Clean Water Act then mandates that we have these NIPD permits and also the consent decree. So part of our job is to ensure compliance with those permits and the consent decree, and which is MSD's wet weather improvement plan. And that is required by our consent decree. So the wet weather improvement plan, along with asset management, drive MSD's capital improvement planning process. And this was trying to paint the picture of how these assessments and water quality are used at MSD. So I also wanted to touch briefly on CIP in the study area. So we put together a ArcGIS story map for the forum and for this watershed and all the sub-watersheds on the west side. And on MSD's website, there is also a public-facing dashboard where you can go and look at this information as well. So I just wanted to highlight a few key facts. MSD owns and maintains approximately 442 miles of sewers within the study area. And since 2019, we have constructed approximately 304 new sewer segments, which is about 10 miles of sewers in the study area. And then again, we have an interactive project map available on our website, and that's also incorporated into the story map, so you can look at that online. And I think I'm going to, I'm not going to go into the story map, but there is, we did put together this interactive story map that gives you the history of the watershed, and there is an interactive map where you can turn on different layers for the CSOs in the watershed and how the different home sewage treatment systems, and there's also a layer for showing you what CSOs have been eliminated and that. So I also wanted to quickly highlight our other public overflow dashboards that MSD has put out for folks to look at and to be aware of how much CSO, how many CSOs are activating and at one time. So they are in real time. We have several different dashboards already available on our website. One of them will give you the volumes of CSO discharges, and then the other ones will look at kind of occurrence data and what has been validated and reported to Ohio EPA. And I was just going to attempt to pull these up in real time to see and to show you how easy it is to access. I probably need to refresh the data here. But you can click on recently active and it'll show you all the CSOs that were recently active. And then if you click on active, it will show you the active CSO. And then we have another dashboard, which is showing you validated overflows. And you can, on this one, drill down to the different watersheds and kind of see where those are located. And then the last dashboard I wanted to highlight gives you a little bit more detail on the volume of wet weather and dry weather overflows for each CSO. And again, these are all available on our website. So I think that concludes my portion of the presentation. Are there any questions? Do we have questions online? No. Okay. Okay. Yes, Neil. We as at the community, not MSD. Okay. We as in, yes, we as a collective. Thank you. Neil is an attorney for anyone. Oh. Oh, yes. Sorry, I have to speak into the microphone. Actually, the question. So the question from Neil was, who is we? It's better to probably say the streams are not meeting the water quality standards instead of using we, but we as a community are not meeting water quality standards. Yeah. Thank you for the question. It's a good clarification. I meant to say that, so thank you. All right, any more questions? Okay. Well, I'm going to actually go ahead and turn it over to Eric Bartle with the Hamilton County Public Health Department. Since I touched pretty heavily on the home sewage treatment systems, I thought it would be a good segue into Eric's presentation. I switched. Sorry.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yes. All right. My name is Eric Bartle. I work for Hamilton County Public Health in the Water Quality Department. And so today I'm going to talk to you briefly about what our department does. It's primarily related to septic systems and the inspection and regulation of home sewage treatment systems. So, as Laura said, there's quite a few of them in Hamilton County. In this specific area, we have a lot of home sewage treatment systems. These systems vary. So the common one most people have heard of is leach line septic systems is a very common one, but that's not actually the most common system we have here in Hamilton County. We have far more discharging home sewage treatment systems in Hamilton County. And what these are is they're like little mini sewer plants. They treat the sewage through aeration and settling and things like that. And then they do discharge the sewage out to a local creek, stream, or water body. And so these systems, the reason we have a lot of discharging septic systems is because we have a lot of clay in our soil here in Hamilton County. And if you try to pour water into clay, it doesn't soak in, it just runs off. And so our soils are really not good when it comes to soil absorption. So that's why we don't have things like leach line and as many soil absorption septic systems here in Hamilton County, but we do. There's other counties that have the same issue with very clay-rich soils, but it's an issue. It's an issue we have to deal with. They come up with, there are systems to get around that. They can do on-site treatment. They're very expensive, but there are options. Has anybody heard of a Wisconsin mound before, or a mound septic system before? Anyone? Yeah. Those are great systems, but they are very expensive to put in, and so they're expensive. And we do order homeowners if there are failures and things like that, and people do need to replace their septic systems. We do order septic system replacements. The septic systems in Hamilton County, we are looking at them on a routine basis to make sure they're functioning properly. We have health inspectors whose sole job is inspecting septic systems in Hamilton County all day, every day. And what these inspections, they're very, very thorough, and they're looking to make sure that the sewage treatment systems are functioning properly. If it's a mechanical home sewage treatment system, which means it has electric running to the system, it gets looked at every single year. So an inspector goes out once a year and verifies that the aerator's functioning properly, the tanks, are not full, do not need to be pumped out, the filters are proper, the UV bulbs are working properly, whatever the chlorinator has chlorine in it, whatever components are on that system, they're checking all of them to make sure they're functioning properly. The non-discharging septic systems, the non-mechanical septic systems, which are typically leach lines systems, we look at those once every 5 years because they're less likely to have problems. When you don't have electric running to a septic system, there's less things that are going to go wrong on it. So those get looked at less frequently, but the primary reason is there's not as many things that can break on them. So some photos up in the right-hand corner. That is an example of a discharging septic system that is failing. So with these aeration septic systems, if electric isn't going to the system, sewage is not getting treated properly. So that could be a breaker flips in the house, or the motor burns up and goes bad, or the filter is clogged. It can be a number of issues. But if the aerators aren't working properly, it is going to have a disgusting discharge coming out of the pipe. We try to avoid this. Our inspectors are looking for two things when they're looking at the discharge pipe of home sewage treatment systems. They're looking to see that the effluent coming out is clear and odorless. If it's not clear and odorless, the system's not going to pass an inspection. Some other really gross photos, but they're typically, I looked for the grossest photos. I was like, I'm going to throw them up because this is sewage and it's what we deal with on a regular basis. So these are signs of failing septic systems. That one on the left would be an example of leach lines. If you have sewage starting to surface in the yard, that's a problem. Any sort of black, grayish color water It's typically a sign it's likely some sort of sewage anaerobic bacteria is starting to form in it. And it's the first indicator that there's a problem when we see something like that. The discharging septic systems that we have in Hamilton County should never look like this. Their discharges should not look like this. However, our failure rate on our inspection program is somewhere between 15 and 20%. So if a health inspector goes out and they typically do somewhere between 10 and 20 inspections a day. 15 to 20% of the septics aren't working. A motor's bad, the system needs to be pumped. There's a problem. The discharge looks bad. There's some sort of problem. And so there becomes an issue when we're having, when septic systems fail, we have to tell homeowners, okay, there's a problem. You need to do X, Y, Z. And as any of you would be, if a government regulator is telling you you have to spend lots of money, you're probably not going to like them very much. And so I would say we are one of the, well, maybe I shouldn't say this, we're not exactly loved when it comes to the inspection program, because we have to tell people you have a problem with your home sewage treatment system and you do need to address it. We always give timelines. Typically it's a 30-day timeline. So if we come out and do an inspection and we find problems, we're gonna send you a letter in the mail, and we're gonna tell you on property if you're there, you have 30 days to get it resolved and fixed, and we'll be back to do a re-inspection and make sure that the discharge is clear and odorless and the system is working properly. I was told I had 5 to 10 minutes to talk, so that's all I have. Any questions about home sewage treatment systems in Hamilton County? Yes. That's a really good question. We recommend that property owners get a real estate inspection. Our office offers that for a fee. If homeowners want to know that the system is functioning properly before they buy the house, they can have our office inspect that system. They can also have a third party come out and do a real estate inspection. It is good to know that your home inspection, when you buy a house, does not include looking at the septic in any way. And almost no home inspections include looking at the septic system. And anyone want to guess what a new septic costs? Just guess. So it ranges. Well, lawyer answer, since we have a lawyer in the room, it depends. Yes. Repeating the question. How much does roughly a home sewage treatment system cost in Hamilton County? And the joke was, it depends, because it depends what type of septic you're going to get on the property. But the consensus is typically somewhere between 30 and 60,000 is what you're looking at roughly. And it can be even more expensive if you have a bigger property. That's a ballpark. Don't hold me to those numbers. I'm just giving you a wide range of what it costs. But if you have to do on-site treatment, keep the sewage on your own property and not discharging, it's even more expensive. And other questions? Go ahead. Yeah. So I think I get what you're getting at. Like, could you order upgrades on the system on the term of transfer? I mean, anything's possible. That'd be a question for lawyers and things like that. Not something I could answer, honestly. But I do recommend, if anyone buys a house, get your septic system looked at, because you do not want to get hit with a $30,000 to $60,000 bill the second you walk into the house. And there is no worse conversation than having to have a conversation with a young family who just bought a house and they had no idea the septic was failing, and it's a mess. And then they try to go after the previous owners. Yes. Yeah, great. Yep. Yes. That's a very good question. So the question was, how many Cavitat septic systems are there in Hamilton County or on the west side in the study area, for example? Cavitat, for those of you that don't know, is a specific brand. It's like saying Kleenex. It was a manufacturer of a home sewage treatment system, and they're very common. They are a discharging septic system, and they are a very old system, and so they do not treat sewage very well. And they're an older system that eventually will have to be phased out, in my opinion, but because the sewage treatment is not great on them. However, I couldn't give you an exact number on how many we have in Hamilton County. Yeah. I'm not sure. But if you get with me after, I'd be happy to email you that answer. Yep. It's one of the discharging home sewage treatment systems. Yep. Correct. Yes, it's roughly around that number. 13 to 14,000 discharging home sewage treatment systems is what we have in Hamilton County. However, we do not have 13 or 14,000 Cavitats because there's other types of discharging systems called jets and old hams and coats. There's a lot of different manufacturers that have made septic systems that have been approved by the state of Ohio over the years, and there are many septic manufacturers out there. Yeah. So. Oh, repeat it. Yes. Does Cavitat work less? Does it treat the sewage less effectively than some of the other discharging home sewage treatment systems? There are better discharging home sewage treatment systems than Cavitat. Yes. Especially some of the newer ones that have come out are pretty good. Yeah. Yes.
Speak to the some kind of the farm sewer.
Sure. So home sewage treatment systems are not supposed to discharge into an MS4 storm sewer system. That doesn't mean, though, it doesn't happen sometimes, but they should not be directly tied to storm sewers. However, if you have a neighborhood up on a hill and they all have septic systems, and then the effluent is entering the creek and then going down into a roadway, for example, and starts going into a pipe, there is effluent in storm systems, but we do not want direct connections into the storm sewers. All right, I went over. I definitely went over. Sorry, guys. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Give it up for Eric. All right, so next I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Hippensteel, who is from the Miami Conservancy District, and I am very excited to hear your presentation. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. Where do you want me? Okay, I was going to stand out there because don't you think it's weird? There's a big space right there. Well, I won't make your job harder. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate the invitation. I met Laura at a meeting that I spoke at about a year ago, probably on the Mad River, which is up north of Dayton. I'll talk about that in a minute. I'll talk about the Mad River. I gave sort of a version of my TED Talk. I did a TED Talk on water. And you asked me afterwards, oh, great, I'll reach out. Maybe you come talk at the forum. And then I saw you a couple weeks ago and I spoke at a water professional conference in Columbus. My talk was much more technical. And you said, oh, great, anything like that will be fine for, well, I'm not going to do either one of those. I'm going to do like a third version. But I kind of need to know who's in the room first so that I can gauge my remarks based on who you are, what you know, what you might be interested in. So I'm going to do that too. But you can see my name. I have a lot of big long name there. I do have a PhD in environmental leadership, actually leadership and behavioral, organizational behavior. I taught leadership theory for many years. I'm not teaching right now, but I have worked for this agency that I'll talk about for about 20 years. I've also worked for private companies. I came to Ohio actually to work for YSI, which is a manufacturer of water quality sondes and other testing equipment. That's why I came to Ohio. Before that, I worked for the state of Indiana. I worked for the Department of Natural Resources. I worked for IDEM. On my first day at IDEM, I said, well, where's the Indiana EPA? They said, this is the Indiana EPA. So anyway, I worked for the Indiana EPA. So I've been state government, nonprofit. I ran the Little Miami River Watershed Partnership years ago. So I've had experience all over the place, but I know one thing, and that one thing is water. So that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. But before that, I see a few familiar faces in the room. But I need to know who you are so I can kind of gauge my remarks. So how many of you are water professionals? How many of you work for MSD? Okay, that helps me a lot. How many of you are a volunteer for a watershed group? Who is there anyone left? Anyone in between that didn't raise your hand? But the IT guy? No, okay. You're also an MSD, but IT. All right, so that helps me a lot. So I am going to talk for, how long do you want me to talk? No, yeah, okay. So my battery is dead. So you'll have to, why don't you give me a 10-minute mark and then I'll know I'm halfway through. I have about 20 slides. That's about one slide for every minute. I'm going to go fast though, because I really want to hear from you too. This is not just about me. I could talk about myself all night, as my friends will tell you, but I'm not going to. I want to hear from you too. I want to know why you love water. So by the way, this whole time, you're going to raise your hand, shout out. I'll remember to ask the question out loud so that everyone online, how many people do we have online? 150. Okay. So, you know, sometimes I go places, there's 2 people. Sometimes there's 2,000. We're in between tonight. That's great. So why do you love water? Tell me. Yep. I hear. Flipping rocks and creeks. Okay. Why do you love water? You fish. What's the #1 sport in the world? Soccer. It's fishing. More people fish than any other sport in the world. My husband that's all he cares about. He thinks, dreams, talks. He could talk all night about lures. Why you need something beyond a worm, I don't know, but he has boxes and boxes. I'm not like pointing any fingers to anyone in here, but he actually set some lures on my dresser a couple of days ago. And I was like, what the heck? Because you can just wrap those up and put them in my stocking. It's making my job easier. I'm like, do you really need more of these? Anyway, fishing, #1 sport in the world. What else do you love about water? What? You like the bugs, the stream bugs. I love the stream bugs too. I could talk all day about the stream bugs. Okay, because bugs, right? If the bugs aren't there, then we know it's not a place. Okay, I have some remarks about some things other people said. First of all, when I bought my house, I won't tell you the year because then you'll start doing the math on how old I am. In my 20s, I thought it was a really good idea to buy a 200-year-old house. I live in Champaign County, way up north, which is good. I don't mind being here late because I'm just waiting for the traffic to die down. So then, anyway, my house did not have a septic system. There was a direct discharging pipe going out over the hill. But the bank told the sellers that they could not sell their house before they so I have the luxury of having a fairly brand new system that was sized for more bedrooms than they really had in the house. So anyway, that's a luxury. But in the modern era, there was a direct discharging pipe. You can't hardly believe that. It's incredible. So I can't imagine what all those septic systems look like. So my other remark is, no, what you said about all that being equal. Pretend like all of those designations are your children. You have to love all your children equally. Exceptional warm water habit to limited resource. But that limited resource, that's your child that went to prison, okay? The exceptional warm water habitat, they got accepted to Harvard. So I get it. You have to say you love them equally. No, we don't. The rest of us, we don't have to love your child that went to prison. Okay. What else do you love about water? Do you? Where do you go? Okay, I water skied for Ohio State. So I just tell people that the reason I got into water is really because I want the rivers to be clean enough for me to water ski in. And I'm a trick skier. That's all I have left. I'm too old to do any other ones because the tricking you go real slow. Anyway, what else do you love about water? Birds. Yes, I saw a weird bird. I was afraid all these roads, they're so up and down. I was trying to drive, but I couldn't tell if it was a juvenile bald eagle right out over not too far. It was either that or a great blue heron. Whatever. I'm going to tell everyone it was a bald eagle. Okay, what else do we love about water? Canoeing. Yep. What else? Come on. Thank you. Do you want to drink polluted water? No. Okay, that's getting to later. Okay, so what do you love about water? Here are all the things that I love about water, right? I love that. I do some triathlons. This is Lake Erie, but sometimes I do a canoeing leg instead of a swimming leg. I always tell people, this joke is getting kind of dated, but it's a mad river. This is trout. Look how cold, look how tough I was. It was snow back there. I always say, this is when I was dating my husband. I was really just trying to land a husband. I have not been fishing in the cold since we got married, just so you know. And this is my little person over there in her very first kayak. She was 4. She's about to graduate from high school. I can't believe it. But anyway, these are the things I love about water. The watershed that I'm going to talk about is not the watershed that we're sitting in right now. How many of you are from the watershed that we're in right now? Right? All of you, I already kind of determined that, but all of you kind of are close proximity to where we are physically. You didn't drive far away to get here. Okay. Or some of you could be in the Little Miami. A couple. Okay. And some of you could be in the Mill Creek. And some of you could be in the Great Miami, which is if you live in Colerain Township or, you're on the west side of Hamilton County, you could be actually in my watershed. So it drains all or parts of 15 counties in Southwest Ohio. It actually does drain part of Indiana, but because I have no jurisdiction there, I pretend like it doesn't exist. But the Whitewater River, I'll get my can of water. The Whitewater River is also part of the Great, but because it doesn't enter the Great Miami until way, way, way down, almost to the mouth of the Ohio, it really doesn't impact the quality of the rest of this watershed. Green is mostly agriculture, and yellow is where people living. The most important thing about this watershed is what's underneath it. It is, you have to say all these things to make it true. The world's largest, freshest, and most accessible aquifer. The Buried Valley Aquifer, you can think of this valley as a giant bowl. When the glaciers left millions of years ago, it scraped out a giant bowl, that bowl filled with gravel, and there's a thin layer of soil on top. In between all those gravel, those pore spaces, it's filled with water. So the reason it's very replenishable is because when drops of rain hit the soil, it's going to fill that bowl back up. That's not the same of aquifers around the country, right? We have the luxury of having this very replenishable source. So in my watershed, 99% of the people who live here get their drinking water from the ground. So they all have wells. It's basically you stick a straw in it, you're going to have clean fresh water. Yes, there are some legacy pollutant issues from our industrial age here and there, but for the most part, it's incredibly clean and doesn't need very much treatment. That's why something like Molson Coors, we don't call it Molson Coors anymore, they're owned by Molson. Molson Coors has its largest brewery in the country in this watershed because they came for this clean water. Cargill has its largest corn processing plant, largest soybean processing plant. And companies like Amylin that make pharmaceuticals, they all come for the water. So we got a lot of water. 6,600 miles of rivers and streams, about 70% of them. I took out my slides about exceptional warm water habitat just because I'm going to talk about other things. But 6,600 miles, 70% of them meet state standards. About 20% don't meet state standards, which means it might be designated as exceptional, but it's not meeting that standard. It might be designated warm water, it's not meeting that standard. And about 20% don't meet them at all. The good news is my main river, the Great Miami, 150 miles, goes from here to Indian Lake, or Indian Lake down to here, I guess, if you're really flowing. It is more exceptional warm water habitat miles than not. And it is meeting those designations. So we're really proud of that. It is actually the second healthiest river in the state. Second, basically, it made the second best comeback after the Clean Water Act was passed. I have some prizes. I'm going to ask you some questions. I don't have a Mentimeter, though. I might use that, though, for a future meeting. I am going to talk about the agency that I work for. We are a conservancy district. I'll show you some slides. We're a regional form of government because, let's be honest, water does not care about jurisdictional boundaries. It does not care about city boundaries. It does not care about where the county lines are or where the township lines are. We were created in 1913 to help our communities with water issues, and we literally are on the boundaries of the watershed itself. I always say we were watershed before watershed was cool. Watershed's cool now. I actually have my undergrad degree is watershed planning, but 100 years ago, it was people didn't think that way. We have three main missions. I'll talk about each one of those a little bit. And that is we protect our communities from floodwaters. We help our communities with water quality and quantity issues, like how much water is left in the aquifer, how healthy are our rivers and streams. And then really what people care about is that their communities are active, exciting, and fun. And our river provides them with those activities. When college students are asked after they graduate, and guess how many college students are in this watershed? We count Cincinnati too. 225,000. Guess what they do after they graduate? They leave. Ohio is the 5th leading state for students who leave after graduation. That's our workforce. That's our future. We want them to stay. When they're asked, why did you move somewhere? They want to go somewhere active, exciting, and fun. So we are turning our river into that fun place. We are telling them that story. It is already, we just need to convince them of that. It's our mountain, it's our ocean. Our river is the place that we want everyone to have fun. Nobody's going to do that if it's disgusting and polluted. Well, this is a video. I hope the sound works. I always forget to tell people that I'm going to play a video with sound.
2013 flooding devastated our region, lasting for days. Uncontrolled floodwaters rose 20 feet in some places, washing away homes and businesses. To ensure that threat never happens again, the Miami Conservancy District built a world-class flood protection system to safeguard you and your family from raging rivers. Today, Miami Conservancy District, so.
And then people are having a lot of fun. The flooding is being controlled by the dam. And the flooding is never going to come back because we have these great levees.
Trying to hold back floodwaters for days or even weeks and slowly releases that water, preventing communities downstream from being over. Once you get into that fishing, the Miami
Concrete deteriorating, very bad.
Reinvestment and rehab to ensure our protection is strong. While there's persistent
More bad flooding, other places, but not here.
flooding of thought, the Miami Conservancy District is here to protect our growing communities and their ambitious plans for economic vitality along our beautiful rivers. We've met these challenges before. We're meeting them now and preparing to protect our great Miami River corridors and people for the future.
You get the gist. So this is who we protect. And it's not just about the people who were flooded in 1913, because that is why we built the system. It's about all of these things that are open every day so that you can still, your wastewater plant is not overwhelmed by floodwaters. Imagine some of the images that we've been seeing out of Asheville and North Carolina, Florida, let's be honest, Houston, Superstorm Sandy. I mean, we could go on and on where the flooding has been going, and the wastewater plants are completely overwhelmed and the drinking water plants are washed away and the bridges and the roads, and you can't call 911 because the ambulance can't get to you anyway because the road's all washed out. None of that is going to happen in Southwest Ohio because of the system that was built in 1915 or between 1915 and 1922. So, well, what comes to mind when you think about flood protection? Just some words. Dams. Hurricane Katrina. You know, it's funny that you say that because I used to think that our system was over-engineered when I would tell you how much capacity we have until Katrina hit Louisiana, and then we began to brag about our capacity. So we can protect 1913. Do I have a slide on that? No. Okay, whatever. Let me. The video is supposed to show you a little bit about 1913. In 1913, 3 storms converged on the Midwest, actually parts of Canada and all sorts of other. It was a huge, huge storm, 3 storm systems that all hit together at the same time. And it was, in today's terms, it would probably be like a 4,000 or 6,000 year event. So that means every year there'd be a 1 in 4,000 or 5,000, 6,000 chance. That's similar to what happened in 1916 in Asheville. They had a devastating flood. They put up a historical marker and they didn't do anything about it because they thought to themselves, this is so big and so huge and so unusual, it will never happen again. The opposite happened in Southwest Ohio. 1913 washed away every riverfront community, Columbus, Cincinnati, all the bridges were out in Indianapolis. Parts of lower Canada were devastated by it. It really, back then, remember, there were no telephones. There was no way to contact anyone. The greatest height of the flood was at night. They had no way to warn anyone. A windstorm had come through 3 weeks before and knocked down all the telegraph lines. So there was no communication, no warning. People were all of a sudden in their living room, and an hour later, their living rooms were 2 feet under, and they went to their second floor, and then their second floor had water in it, and they were busting out of their roofs, just like we saw in Katrina when they were staying on the rooftops waiting to be rescued. Our leadership at the time said, we are never going to want our communities to go through this. They were traumatized. So they hired a young engineer named Arthur Morgan, who was a systems thinker. And he said, we need to hold back water at the source. So when you think of flood protection and you think of dams, are those dams lakes? Do they have giant lakes behind them? Yeah, they do. That's not the way our system works. We have these dry dams. I'll show you pictures in a second. That hold back water in the upper headwaters, and they only work when it rains so much that they need to start storing water. They work like an open bathtub drain. So our rivers run unimpeded during times of normal flow, which means that our rivers stay much healthier. There's not that big impoundment behind the dam with no oxygen in it where the fish don't want to live. Our rivers are flowing all the time. They're called conduits, but the dams have holes in them, and that's where the river flows. And then when the river starts to rise, it eventually will rise above, cover that hole, and that's when it backs up behind the dam. And we have rights over 35,000 acres total behind those 5 dams. It's agriculture, it's parkland. No one can live there. We don't want to have to rescue anyone. But it will naturally fill up those areas behind each dam, depending on how big the subwatersheds are. It was very unique. It's still very unique. In order to build this, we had to build 5 little cities, one at each dam site. It was World War I. We couldn't hire contractors, so we hired our own workforce and built these towns. Arthur Morgan was a social engineer as much as a physical engineer. He didn't want these little towns to be of ill repute with prostitutes and drinking. And so he built homes and barracks for the single men. He brought their families in. He built churches. They all had community centers and schools. It was as much of a social experiment as it was a physical experiment. And the cities are all gone, by the way. They disbanded them and sold the houses off. And anyway, It was all built by hand between 1915 and 1922. There was only steam engines. There was no OSHA. Only 2 people died. It's a miracle. They weren't even wearing hard hats. So the system is gigantic. It's spread out. It's now over 100 years old. And while we have cared for it over the years, we are facing, quite a bit of infrastructure improvement that's needed. So that's how the system works. That's one of the reasons that our river is many, many miles of exceptional warm water habitat. Our dams are not impounding the water, and we've bought up and preserved all the floodplain because that's where we store our floodwaters occasionally. But then there's no development along that river. So that's one of the advantages we have. Halfway. Okay. So here we are. It's 100 years old. It's aging. It's falling apart. Let's be honest. A chunk of Germantown Dam fell into the Twin Creek last spring, March, 2 years ago, March. Anyway, so our engineers are doing a lot of planning, doing a lot of estimating. We did major rehab to the dams itself, to the core, to make sure that the core structure is as strong as today's technology will allow. We did that between 1999 and about last year. We finished those projects. But now we're facing this massive amount of concrete rehab. It's about $150 million in today's estimates. And even if we had $150 million today, we don't have enough manpower to possibly do all those projects at once. So it's going to have a phased approach over time after we figure out where the money comes from. We're also, given that most of you are water professionals, you know that we are seeing more rain. We are seeing more rain when we don't want it and less rain when we do. We are seeing more violent storms. We are seeing them come flashier, all of those things. And so our dams are storing more now than they ever have. So they're working harder. So we're 100 years old and it's working harder. We ranked the top 100. We had one in the top 7. We had number 70 last year. We have done a tremendous amount of monitoring over the years. Rainfall is one of those things that we have going back way over before our agency was even formed. This is the moving 30-year average, not the annual average. So the 30-year average has increased rainfall about 5 inches a year over the last 100. Just so you know, we do work in silos. I mean, if you're agency professionals, you'll be interested to know this, but also if you were a taxpayer, you'd really want us to tell you that our bike trails are not being built by the money that you give us for flood protection. So we have, if you're protected by the system, you pay to be protected. It's a small amount on your real estate taxes based on the value of your property, based on how much you flooded in 1913. Your city, your community, your county also pays to have some level of protection for all the shared roads and those kind of things. We do a tremendous amount of water quality and quantity work. 9 counties participate in a program that they all spread that amount out and everybody pays just a little bit. For example, in near Dayton, if you had a 60-acre property, you might pay $1. So it's very stretched thin, but when you spread it out, it gets quite a bit of money for us to do that work. And we work with farmers to reduce nutrient pollution, and we help our communities comply with stormwater regs, and anything related to water quality and quantity is under that division. And then we do build bike trails, and we help people access the river, and we build boat ramps and all sorts of things. And that is paid for by communities who ask us to build that kind of recreation. So I just want to tell you that, don't worry, we're not building bike trails with flood protection. I already talked about water stewardship, but we do a lot of monitoring. In addition, we have a full scientific team. And you're interested in how our trends are going, I threw this one up there. But, we're in a multi-year drought. Now, that was last week, and this week we're no longer in the drought. So we're no longer in the drought. But once a drought is not a drought until you're multi-years into it, more than 1 year. So we are 2 years into a real drought, except last week we started kicking out of it because of the rainfall. So that's the good news. We are going to end the year a little bit in a deficit. So if we continue to see these trends, it could be even worse next year. The worst part is, our number one economic engine is not getting the rain they need when they need it. So agriculture is Ohio's greatest economic, piece of the economy. 1 in 7 jobs are tied to agribusiness. And when they get violent rainstorms at the wrong time, that's just flushing their seeds down the drain and their fertilizer into our rivers. So, and then when they don't get enough rain later on, the crops aren't growing, and that's going to, really impact all of us. So anyway, those are the water trends. I will tell you that one of the things that we frequently worry about the most is something that seems impossible, but it's not. And that is somebody coming in, sucking our aquifer and taking it somewhere else. So in the Great Lakes, they'll have a compact. The governors all signed an agreement that that Great Lakes water cannot be siphoned off and sent outside of those states unless they all agree upon it. There's nothing like that to protect our aquifer. Yeah, you have to get a DNR permit, but honestly, it's incredibly easy and it doesn't cost very much. So that permit process is not going to stop someone coming in and taking our water for somewhere else. It used to seem really impossible because water is very heavy and it's expensive to pipe until they built the Rocky Express pipeline across the southern portion of this watershed. Now they own the real estate. I have been reading article after article since last year of real evaluations from out west about how expensive it will be to come here and get our water. It is not an empty threat. So the Ohio Water Development Authority just gave us a grant last week to study this issue and what the likelihood of this threat is. So that's what we're worried about. And then, like I said, nobody cares about any of that stuff when you talk to them. What they care about is that they have fun and that there's something to do and that their community is thriving. So we spend a lot of time helping our communities tell their story in relation to this river so that they can have positive economic activity, that they can have thriving downtowns, and the water is the common thread through all of that. So we have created a travel and tourism brand called the Great Miami Riverway. A few years ago, we had a major study done on our region, and they said, wow, you have more parks, more river access, more fun festivals, more fun urban downtowns than any other river corridor in the country, but no one knows about it because you've never told anyone. So we hired a branding expert, we formed a coalition, and we have 20 riverfront cities, counties, and park districts that form this partnership that pay into this. And we do a tremendous amount of marketing and outreach to help drive visitors to these communities, because nobody ever moved to a community or built a business without being a visitor first. So the ultimate goal is workforce attraction and retention. That's what, we'd like to tell our politicians, but really it's about being active, exciting, and fun. And if you've seen this publication, which is a Cincinnati-based, this is the Adventure Crew Outdoors for All. It's a really comprehensive guide on all the fun things down here. And for the last few years, we have been spending some of that money to buy the inside page so that they know they can come up to our watershed too. So that's the kind of, branding and outreach that we do to try to get visitors. Interestingly enough, when we do analysis, done tons and tons of analysis on who comes to our river to have fun, besides the fact that if you live in Dayton, you might come, whatever, we rule that out. Where else are we going to get new visitors? They all come from Cincinnati. So we do a lot of marketing and outreach down here into Cincinnati Magazine and to, all the places to try to get those people to recreate in our river. And then I would just say nobody cares about any of that stuff if your river is dirty. And this is where I say algae blooms, not just for lakes anymore. This is an algae bloom. It's in the middle of downtown Dayton. This is a small lowhead dam. It was built for recreation a long time ago. It was not toxic. We went out and tested it, but this does happen. It comes from upstream agricultural runoff. And in the late summer, when the low flow is happening, we're seeing this. And we certainly don't want it to be toxic. And it could, because of course, those toxins like it warm, and climate change is causing everything to be warmer. All of you know the difference between point source and non-point, right? I would just say, it was funny that we talked about watershed, someone talked about needing a watershed group, because that's actually what I'm going to end on. So a technical challenge is something that you can solve easily with an expert. You break your arm, you go to the hospital. Your car makes a funny noise, you take it to the mechanic, you don't know what's going on, you completely trust them to fix it for you. That's a technical problem with a technical solution. You don't need to do anything to change. You might write a check, but it's easy. It might, not be, you might not be happy about it, but it's easy to fix. You go to a doctor, they put your arm in a cast. That's a technical problem. Point source discharges, those septic tank problems, that's a technical problem. We just need to get that into a better system. Easy peasy. $60,000 later, now I'm terrified that my system is going to fail. Thank goodness my county, there's not that many inspectors. They don't come out very often. It's fine. It works great. I'm just saying, now I'm terrified. But every time you have a repair, they come up. My county, they only come when you have a repair. So anyway, adaptive challenges are things that are hard to fix. Everybody not picking up their dog poop after they walk their dog and it rains and flows into our rivers and streams, that is an adaptive problem. We have to have them change their behavior. We have to convince them they're part of the problem. We have to convince, how many people live here? I don't know. How many of them have a dog? We have to convince all of those dog owners that they have to make a behavior change. I'm just giving you a simple example so that you can picture it. Think of every small farmer. Now, farmers generally do a good job, and I'm not here to demonize them because we've worked closely with them and they want to do the right thing. They don't want to be the polluter. But just think about, in those 6,600 miles of rivers and streams, how many farmers we have to convince to change their practice. And it's expensive. They might have to change their technology, right? That's an adaptive problem. They might say, well, it's just me. I'm not part of the problem. It's just my one little dog. It's just my one little leaking car oil problem. It's my one little septic tank, right? You have to convince them that they're part of the problem. That's an adaptive challenge. You have to get them to adapt. And it's not easy because you cannot regulate it. You cannot regulate all those dog owners. You cannot regulate all those farms. It's never going to happen. Let's be honest with ourselves. Agriculture is the strongest lobby in the state and the #1 economic engine. Regulate them. We have to do that through education and incentives because they want to do the right thing. I'm just saying, it's hard, it's long, and it's an arduous process. This is one of my favorite quotes. It's Heifetz. He's a Harvard professor. He's many published. He talks about this difference between trying to solve a technical problem with trying to solve an adaptive problem with a technical solution. We're never going to be able to regulate farmers like we regulate discharging pipes. We've got to stop trying. Adaptive management involves all of us. We have to help people understand that they are part of the problem. They have to come to the table willing to solve the problem. So that means we're not going to demonize them. We're not going to accuse them. We're going to call them to the table because they're community leaders and we know they want to be part of the solution to having their community be a healthier place. That's where watershed groups come in. This is the work of watershed organization. This is the work of everyone joining in, realizing that water is not an afterthought. It is the most important thing in our community. And if we don't keep taking care of it, we're not going to have the life, the health, all those things, the words that you pulled up on the screen, right? So this is an example of my watershed covered in all the little different groups that they're nonprofits, they are community-based organizations. This was 2000. Guess how many of them are here now? I think one. Yep. I think the biggest hurdle that we all have is to convince our community members that water is important enough for us to focus on. Otherwise, they're going to stand back and think that MCD is going to take care of it or MSD is going to take care of it. We mix those up so often in my office now. It's just, We just call ourselves MSD sometimes. It's not. It's going to take the million people that we need to convince that water is so important that they need to come together and meet and make priorities and talk about why, I'm not pointing at you, talk about why those creeks that you showed aren't making better gains. Why is it? What can they all do together? It's an adaptive problem. We're not going to be able to regulate it, right? The Clean Water Act did awesome. It cleaned up all those direct discharging pipes, all of those automobile companies that were dyeing their cars blue that day and the rivers were running blue. I guess blue is a bad example. Orange, the paper companies that were discharging all of their waste, all of that leftover ash that comes from the power, all of that has been cleaned up. What's left is all this non-point source pollution that can only be addressed if everybody takes responsibility for a little piece of it. So, 2 slides left. This one, great water makes a great region. Get it? Great Miami River. Great. Whatever. It's about clean drinking water. It's about abundant recreation. It's about keeping those college students here. And then weather is really bad and we're going to have to do something about that. Any questions? 50 on any given day. We have about half of us work in the office. I don't work in the office. I work across 15 counties, but half of them are maintaining dams and levees and infrastructure and all the things that go with the system. And about half of us are either working on the water quality quantity side of things or engineering staff. Oh, that's a really good question. They're asking what's our breakdown of money coming in from grants or assessments and other things? We get very few grants. The problem with, not a problem, but the challenge with the Miami Conservancy District is we are not associated with the Army Corps of Engineers. Our dams and levees predate all that. We don't have a relationship with them. We get no federal funding. We get no state funding. And I should have said this, our region wanted to completely control the solution. They didn't trust the politicians of the day. They thought they were corrupt, not like today or anything. But it's completely locally controlled, locally funded, locally led. And because of that, then it's primarily assessments or by agreement, by community agreement. And I'm fortunate, I get to brag. I've raised millions of dollars in grant funds over the years, but most of it went to the water quality quantity side of things. Any other questions? Yeah, good, because you ask me anything, I'll make it up. This is our annual newsletter. You want to know why it's called the Deed? No, don't. Didn't say yes. That wasn't very enthusiastic. One of our, I want to say founding father, but then I get irritated when I have to say that. But so one of our founding peoples, his name was Colonel Edward Deeds. And he had a big hand in making sure that the agency was successful and built properly in the beginning. And so anyway, it's called the Deed. All putting in tile. I think it's great that Governor DeWine is so focused on the environment, and he really is compared to previous administrations. He has re-energized the DNR. Previous administrations devastated the environmental agencies. And I'm grateful that he is focused on water as much as his administration is. Let's be honest, it could be worse. I think that until we can undo the giant corporate agriculture machine, we're not going to see regulation. The more incentives that we can create, the more education that we can do. I see corporate agriculture as the main problem. Those aren't small farmers. They're all on the commodity markets. They're all stuck because they have chosen a business where they have to do what these commodity markets are demanding that they do. And so I'm on the board of a nonprofit that's focused on regenerative agriculture, soil health. I think we need to be talking about regen ag and soil health, because monocrops aren't providing any soil health or any benefits at all. And it's just, I don't think it's going to change until we can move that needle. I'm appreciative of Clean Ohio as much as it is. It could be better, but it could be worse.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Great. We are running short on time. So last but not least, we have Chris Hall here, who's going to speak for a few minutes about his work at the Conservation District.
All right, well, thanks for being here and on with me. I got a QR code up there. We're doing a planning program. So you can zoom in on that. My invitation mostly. So if you want to be part of it, we need to know that you want to be part of it so that we can make you part of it. But it is planning the things that we do. So I work for the Conservation District, which apparently every county since the Dust Bowl has a Conservation District, and most of them are focused on ag, which is all the things that I'm learning in there. Ag is all about paying farmers to do what we think they should do. But anyway, for my part as a stream specialist, we have I'm learning quite a few things, and one of them is about the differences between the streams. Because I worked at MSD for a long time, and I know all about the Mill Creek and Muddy Creek and the Little Miami, where all the CSOs were and industry was. But other streams out there have different impacts. They're all a lot different. Some of them are bigger, like Mill Creek. It has a big flow coming in from the Butler County plant. So there's constant flow in the Mill Creek. You go into Muddy Creek, it's pretty small-ish, and its main flow, the headwaters are CSOs. Rapid Run, headwater, CSO. So these are small watersheds, do not have a source of clean water that drives the fish and the macroinvertebrates. The topography is a real challenge as well. It's disappointing to me as now, but also as all my years with MSD, to see that all the money that we spent, all these huge projects, major projects that reduce pollution significantly. I mean, a lot of pollution reduced. Improvement numbers just don't show it in these studies we're doing. Terribly disappointing. So there's more to the story than just removing sewage. And it's some of it's probably the septic tanks, a lot of it's habitat, a lot of it's what folks are doing. So we can improve what folks are doing. And Sarah just talked about how they get folks to, adapt to change. So one of the early entry points for us could be citizen science. So I volunteered at the Little Miami. We got Beth Himbergs here from Mill Creek Alliance running the citizen science in the Mill Creek. And it'd be wonderful if they get somebody who lives Muddy Creek, Rapid Run, to join this program and get some sampling going on out there in these basins, just to kind of start raising awareness, start recruiting folks to pay attention to what's going on in their watershed. Indian Creek's pretty small. And a lot of these, they're so steep, not many homes are immediately adjacent. So few that when we really polluted them, I thought we'd have pitchforks outside the gate, but there's only a couple dozen of them. So it just makes it hard to get access to these streams for folks to go down sample, for folks to down recreate, for folks to be there, and that's just a challenge. Taylor Creek is a lot more opportunity. So I would just implore the district to widen their study, broaden into the Taylor Creek, figure out what's really going on there, what's even going on with some of the not so great improvements in aquatic life. So, now on the,
I'm a stakeholder in the neighborhood. There's money to wrap it up. We have about 400 acres, mainly along the creek, and most of them have combined sewer overflows in them. But
if we wanted to get funding to address it, there's no watershed action group. There's no HUC 12 plan. How do we get, we have, this year we'll have over 6,000 volunteer hours working to restore, preserve, but we can't get any funding to work on water quality because there's no watershed action.
yeah, you need the Rapid Run, alliance, so the Muddy Creek Alliance. You really need that, but that's a great challenge.
and I thought we would talk about results of the study and like what's planned. Like tonight, I haven't heard any. I mean, all due respect to the Great Miami, but I thought we were going to be talking about the Muddy Creek, Rapid Run, the other creeks.
Yeah, we presented those results. That was the MBI report. And the intent of the forum is really to present the results of the report for what it is. We don't have a plan. And the forum is just to present the data and the information. And it's a call to action really for all of us as stakeholders to try and figure out. And kind of the last slide and that I have in the presentation is really just final thoughts and like what actions can we take. And I think the overarching theme here is that there really needs to be that champion for the watershed, that action group that you mentioned that can really start helping organize and taking action so that we can see improvements. But yeah.
So there's no plan. What you said, is there a plan to make a plan?
That's a fair question.
Yeah.
And the
And what is the wet weather improvement plan for our stream? And I'm sure, and we have dry weather overflows occurring for months. And I call MSD, nobody comes out, right? We're not a priority because nobody lives there. For months, and this is where people recreate.
what a great opportunity
Yeah. I'm just wondering, like, what is there's no plan, but when will there be a plan?
That's a great question. I think we're working on it, and maybe Reese Johnson, I'm not going to put him on the spot, but Reese Johnson is actually the new deputy director over engineering.
It's just a little insulting to come tonight and hear talk about agriculture when there's dry weather overflows going on.
Yeah, this forum is really this forum is really to be a conversation around water quality in our region. It's not an MSD, plan forum. It's for all stakeholders, and it's not just MSD, which is why we bring in other partners and to present on what they're doing, because again, it's a collective effort, and we're all striving to have clean water. So
I know.
and turn it over to
I'd like to hear from other
Karen Ball with Hamilton County.
Yeah.
Tough job. No kidding. The county would very much like to see a watershed approach to the solutions that are delivered by all of the projects that MSD is going to have to construct. We do have one IWAP, Integrated Watershed Action Plan, completed, which identified areas where pollution was happening in streams that didn't necessarily tie back to MSD. Yeah, we have to figure out how we're going to get these other projects completed. We're trying to make sure that we can get as many HSTS systems into the sewer system where we know that the water quality, working with the health department. As a matter of fact, County Board of County Commissioners has the one and only policy across the country that we know of that caps the private side cost for the construction of public sewer. Yep, there's still private side costs, but the public section of that sewer is capped for those property owners. No one else does that in the community. We know here in Hamilton County that MSD is not the only contributor. It's not the only part of the solution. adaptive management, under its true understanding of adaptive management, is going to get us there. And working with stormwater districts, making sure that they're having projects come forward, which isn't happening right now. So across Hamilton County, we've got billions and billions of dollars worth of stormwater work that has to happen, and there's not a penny that's being spent on stormwater control. MSD can't do it all. So we all have to work together and make sure that the source of the pollution is addressed by the source's solution. And it's not always going to be upsizing MSD pipes.
Here, but with the.
Yeah, we are 5 minutes over, so I do want to be
Mentioned here, and then just to wrap up, my term here with the Conservation District, and this was my retirement job, I'm having a blast, but I don't have a long career ahead of me. But a few years here at the Conservation District, they kind of direct things a little bit different. And part of that's through the long-range planning that we're doing. So that'll be really helpful to get input from folks. This is where we should be working. And while I'm here, you know, I have the citizen science, we can advance that. We can help with that. So this is a small piece. I'm just one person in a 16-person organization. So we have, and show me my next slide. There's other things that we can do with the district. We do training, we do public involvement. We have a lot of skill sets related to that, and we can apply some of those to what we're doing here with stream health assessment. So these tools are doing, there's citizen versions of those that we can train you on. We have a very nice training facility. We have a demonstration site that we could use. So there's an opportunity to reach out to you, to whoever you got, and we can just raise awareness, we can raise your skill set. That's what we can do. And then the community needs to follow a path. And we need a leader for that. That's right.
Thank you. All right. So yeah, going back to final thoughts, just to wrap things up, we are 5 minutes over. And I'm happy to follow up with you afterwards, and we can dig more into the data and talk. And Reese Johnson, who's our Deputy Director and Chief Engineer over the CIP and Wet Weather Improvement Plan, is happy also to talk to you. But the final thoughts, again, is if we had unlimited resources, what would you do to improve water quality on the west side? It's a big question. There's not one solution. I thought tonight's forum, and I invited Sarah Hippenstale here because MSD does have 3 treatment plants that discharge to the Great Miami River. So it is part of MSD's, contribution. So that is why she was here. Again, the Water Quality Forum is meant to be a conversation and an opportunity for us to present the results of the monitoring and the in-stream program that we do here at MSD. So I appreciate all of your attention and time, and I welcome you back to our forum next year, which hopefully will be all-encompassing of all watersheds. So again, thank you.